And so in the same way, we confuse happiness with status, and we confuse ourselves as living organisms which are one with this whole universe with something we call our personality. Now, what is our personality?
So get a theme song for your life, and it doesn't matter what it is. Just think about it. And it's a song that you play, and it's one of those songs that probably, just sort of it makes you feel more alive.
Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is life not more important than food, and the body more important than clothes?
Here's the thing, right? If you could go back in time and get a message to your younger self, what would you tell yourself? Because part of this obviously goes back.
It's going to be all right, Ian. It's going to be all right.
Don't worry, Ian.
My lovely wife Melissa, and this Sunday is the second to last Sunday in the series called The Best Advice, where various people have shared the best pieces of biblical wisdom they've received over the years. And in a minute, Melissa is going to share something she wrote in response to a book we both read last year. And the book was called The Return of the Prodigal, and it was written by Henry Nouwen, or Henry Nouwen, depending on your preference. And in the book, Nouwen reflects upon a very famous painting by Rembrandt called The Return of the Prodigal, which is up there on the screen. And the book traces through the three main characters of the parable. We've got the prodigal son, his elder brother, and of course their father. And Melissa and I both found Henry's reflections incredibly powerful. And so Melissa put together a few prose in response to this book, which she's going to share shortly. So let me now just read the parable from Luke. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided up his property between them. Now not long after that, the young son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. And after a severe famine in that whole country, he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to the fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and I am starving to death? I will get up and go to him and say, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son, so make me one of your hired men.' And so he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him, and he ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, get the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near to the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called out to one of his servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come home,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all of these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. But when the son of yours, who has squandered your property with the prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because your brother was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now is found.
Thank you, Daniel. Good morning, everyone. Well, Henry Nouwen's book is titled The Return of the Prodigal Son, which advises that if there was a home coming, there must have been a home leaving. And if there was much joy in his returning, it means there must have been much sadness in his departing. If we rewind the clock about a year or perhaps 2000, we found ourselves in the context in which this parable was founded. The son goes to his father, the one who cared for and loved him so, and asks for his inheritance that he has the means to go. Now, in this period of time, this request was unheard of and offensive, and in radical contradiction to the most venerated tradition. You see, in asking for his inheritance that he had no right to until his father's death, he is saying to his father, I am wishing you were dead. We can assume, therefore, that this hurtful act of the son leaving was far more offensive than it seems at first reading, but this hurtful action poses the question of why did the son leave home? Home is a place where I dwell with my father. Home is a place where I hear my father's voice. Home is a place where I rest in the knowledge that I am his son. Home is where I know I'm indeed carved in the palms of God's hands and hidden in their shadows, and it's those same hands that hold me safe in an eternal embrace. Home is the center of my being. It's that inner place inside my core where I rest in the knowledge of him telling me, you are my beloved. On you my favor rests. Leaving this home is living as though I do not yet have a home and must look far and wide to find one. But why would I leave the place where I know my Father's voice? Because in this world there are other voices. These voices sell me the idea that I could obtain love far more satisfying than the love I have at home, and so off to the distant country I now roam. At first the voices are tantalizing. Happiness comes quick, easy and fast. It can get quick satisfaction and easy gratification with cheap thrills, sugar-coated lies and drinking until you find the happy feeling at the bottom of the glass. It comes by ensuring I have a successful, doting partner, but don't think that relationship will be happily ever after, because happiness comes in being free in spirit and in mind, and you don't want to be tied down or backed by some marital grind. The happy feelings increase, of course, when I've reached that perfect bodily shape and I've covered myself in designer clothes that some $2 per hour sweatshop Asian has to make, but don't worry, at least I'm not on that wage. You see, happiness comes in climbing those corporate heights, so I can ensure I climb into my overpriced vehicle and climb up the stairs to my 6-bedroom house for 2 with gardens of kept roses, where I can climb over the fence to ensure I'm keeping up with the Joneses, and what a feeling of happiness I get when I realise I've beaten them. Happiness is further obtained when I've filled my eating habits with a gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, wheat-free, resulting in food-free diet. And don't think I'm going to use toxic Teflon, my friends. Now cast iron's the only way to fry it. And so we wander around the distant country, clothed in the exact uniform and cooking the exact recipe that the world tells us is happiness. But these voices start to grow sinister. These voices are loud and they're full of promises and they're extremely seductive. They begin to tell me I must prove myself by being successful, popular, powerful and productive. They start to reach those inner places where I question my goodness and my self-worth. They suggest I'm unlovable unless I've earned it through determination and hard work. They want me to prove to myself that I am worthy to be the one that God calls beloved. They want me to work to ensure I've earned the place where my sins can now be covered. They keep pushing me to do everything possible to gain some form of acceptance, and even when I think I've made it, the voices require more and I'm still rejected. You see, I've left home because I lost faith in the one who gives me the love I unknowingly require. And I follow the voices that offer a greater variety of ways to win the love I so much desire. My happiness starts to depend on whether or not the world loves me. After all, that's what I was looking for all along. But I'm so far into this obtaining things to get happiness that surely the world can't be wrong. In his book, The Prodigal Son, Henry Nouwen rightly says, we are like a small boat on the ocean at the mercy of its waves. and the waves of people's opinion rock my tiny boat, and life turns not into a holy struggle, but an anxious struggle to stay afloat. A little criticism makes me angry, a little rejection makes me depressed, a little praise raises my spirits and I get excited at a little success. The ocean seems unstable, I'm subjected to whether or not I can please, and all my emotional energy gets used in not drowning in these seas. My life becomes unsteady, I feel utterly alone. And these are the results of leaving my father's stable home. But I keep running around asking the world, do you love me? Do you really love me? You see, the world's love is conditional. It's a world that's filled with ifs. If you do that, I will love you. I'll accept you if you do this. And if I ask the world if it loves me, I'm ensuring to the world I remain a slave, attempting to find acceptance and failing all the way to my grave. I take the gifts that God has given me and use them to impress, to compete, and to seek praise. I put them in service of a world instead of a God who deserves the glory of them all of my days. I must be smarter, better, fitter, more hardworking. These voices continue to tell you, and I carry these gifts to a distant country, to a world that doesn't know their true value. I am the prodigal. Every time I search for unconditional love where it cannot be found. I'm back in my boat subject to the waves of opinion instead of at home on stable ground. My identity becomes wrapped up and trapped up in three lies that every single person wrestles with, stresses over, and is often ruled by. The first one is that our identity is found in the idea that I am what I do, which is where my works, my actions, my job, my experiences are important to how I'm perceived by you. The second lie is that our identity is found in the idea that I am what people say about me. I seem to go up and down with criticism and praise, or when people look, what I think they might see. The third lie upon which our identity is based is the idea that I am what I have, which includes family, spouse, property, clothes. To this list I'll continually add. Jesus was tempted by Satan in all three things. When into the desert he was led. Show the people your worth by what you can do. Turn these stones into bread. Throw yourself off the temple to the angels. Let the people sing your praise. Or let your worth be found in what you have. I'll give you kingdoms for the rest of your days. But they are lies, Jesus said. Be gone from me, Satan. This battle you have not won. For I will worship only the living God. I live in the knowledge that I am his son. There comes a point in this cycle when we're exhausted, overwhelmed, despondent, and downright sad, because these voices have taken every ounce of energy we have and they have never given back. The prodigal had to lose everything he had to realize he had everything he wanted before he had everything he thought that he needed to be loved. In his grief, his friends didn't pay him the slightest bit of interest, and to the world he had now lost his existence because he had no money left or gifts left to give, and the world filtered him out like liquid through a sieve, and he found himself now making a home with the pigs, and he was wallowing. But in that wallowing, he remembered. Oh, how he remembered his father's servants who ate better than he, and he knew that his journey was fruitless and hopeless and wrapped up in selfish misery. He remembered the father's voice. He remembered the father who loved, the father who said, "This is my son. On you my favour rests." You see, the journey home begins when we remember our sonship. But we must remember, we must believe this, because it's easy to get caught up in self-pity. We find comfort not in a God who is with us, but in the familiarity of wallowing in our misery. Both Peter and Judas denied Jesus, and both were left in a state of despair, but only Peter returned to the Lord with much sadness and was received with great love and great care. Don't keep wallowing in the mud with the swine, because the homecoming is a beautiful thing. The journey home, though, is a long one, as it is for most, because we're not instantly rid of the voices that reappear like unwanted ghosts. The prodigal wrestles on his way home and develops a conversation with his father. He'll say to him, "I'm not worthy to be your son anymore. I'll be a slave in your house if you'd rather." And as we dwell on the prodigal's innermost mind, I can't help but reflect on how similar it is to mine. You see, we are seldom without some role play in our head, where I might explain, boast, proclaim, defend. I'll evoke pity, apology, adversity, or praise. I'll pretend to be the victim. I'll attempt to seek fame. It seems we're perpetually involved in long dialogues with absent partners, anticipating their questions and preparing our answers, and I'm amazed by the energy that goes into these inner ruminations and murmurings and thoughts. Why the lengthy mental dialogues, though? Why do we converse with ourselves like this? Perhaps it's because the hardest thing for us to accept is God's unconditional forgiveness. The son knew he was going back, but didn't believe his father would wholly accept him. He never thought he would become a hero again and the dust behind him would be his sin. But if only we could have one glimpse of the father's face in that moment. No disapproval or condemnation. Just love and joy in his eyes. Losing all inhibition, this father runs towards us as though we're his only prize, and he cries, "My son was lost and he is found. My son has returned home where he belongs. Let us celebrate by killing the fattened calf and celebrate with songs, because my son was dead and now he is alive." Do we deserve the homecoming and celebration? No. Not by any means, but the beautiful picture of what God did on the cross unravels in this scene. You see, Jesus got what I deserve so that we get what he deserves, which means it's by his compassion, love, and grace we find ourselves in his place, and by no account of our own have we been welcomed back home, which means all glory belongs to God and we seek none of our own. And life at home begins to look very different. Home is the center of my being, where it's God's audible voice I hear, where I walk in the valley of darkness and no evil will I fear. Is the beloved being home I can confront, console, admonish, and encourage without fear of being rejected or needing affirmation from others. I can be persecuted without the desire for revenge. I can be content with what I have, rejecting comparisons with friends. I can receive praise without using it as proof of my goodness. I can walk in the freedom of living in God's fullness. Home is the never interrupted voice of love speaking from eternity, giving life and love whenever it's heard to set our captive hearts free. The prodigal thought freedom would be found in a world he desired to taste, unaware the freest he would ever be is with the Father who gave him his freedom in the first place. And that Father knows that we have wandered, but in his infinite mercy, he welcomes us home again and again and again. Though we've all been the younger son at some stage, most of us here are probably more suited to the elder. Having returned home to the father, you've been in his house for a while, and a lot of these issues you may have dealt with. If you haven't and you're new to your father's home, then I encourage you to still listen in, because we all experience the elder son in us at some point, even if we wouldn't think so when we first begin. The younger son left home to seek happiness and freedom at what became an incredible cost. The elder, however, did the right things exteriorly, but interiorly became just as lost. He worked hard on his father's field and laboured long days on the land so he could please. He fulfilled all his obligations as the elder, but found he became increasingly unfree. Perhaps we as elders have forgotten that we first came home only by his grace and mercy, and our default human nature now tells us we have to work very hard to be deemed as worthy. This working takes many different forms. We might get involved with a wide variety of people and groups. We might bake cookies for neighbours, give candy to strangers and ensure that the homeless have plenty of hot soup. We might devote ourselves to reading great theories, learning everything there is to know about God. We might lead and serve and give up smoking and encourage the neighbours to lay off the grog. We might give all our money, go live in a box and starve for the name of Jesus. Certainly the answer to poverty is posting that on Facebook and creating a social awareness. But if these works don't first come from the knowledge of God's love and simply overflows from our changed heart within us, we bake to exhaustion, the cookies end up burnt and soup is served in a dutiful rush. The learnings you've made about God may end up rammed down throats, leaving a condemned feeling on people's teeth, and you find you end up joining your neighbours in the grog session just to give your mind some form of relief. Or you become lonely and bitter in your box living ways, mad that no one else is doing it with you, wondering why the sphere of influence you thought you'd have is limited to so very few. But we press on. we say, because it's good and it's right and we're diligent keepers of the law, even though somewhere in the midst of it all, we've forgotten who we were doing it for. The obedient and dutiful life of which we are proud, or for which is often praiseworthy, feels sometimes like a burden laid on our shoulders, a burden that can be oppressing. I have no difficulty identifying with the elder son who complained, "I have slaved, never disobeyed, yet not even once was a goat offered to me." But in this complaint, obedience and duty have become a burden, and service has quickly become slavery. As I was writing this message, I hit a wall, and at the dining table had a good old wine. I said, "Here I am trying to write this for you, Lord, and you won't even give me a line." I said it out loud, I got frustrated, and then started to feel incredibly self-righteous. There are plenty of people having fun right now, Lord. I'm giving my day off for you to write this. How suddenly bitterness and sulking crept in. It happened swift, fast, and quickly until a holy slap in the face woke me to the realization of the elder son within me. Though I had stayed at home and didn't wander off, this inner resentment reveals to me my own lostness. Not living free in my Father's house, my anger and envy shows me my own bondage. This is not unique to me. There are many elder sons and daughters who are lost while still at home, and sometimes there is great comfort in the realization that we're not alone. We've forgotten that first love that accepted us as prodigals who'd found their way back, and we now try to work to earn salvation because we know perfection is something we lack. Friends, this very quickly becomes tiring and testing, and our patience runs out very fast, and we start to wonder why our energy and joyfulness doesn't seem to last. These are the results of not leaving, but forgetting we are already at home and in communion with our Father. The saddest part of the elder son's journey is that he couldn't participate in his father's joy. In his jealousy and hurt and anger, this party is something he'd rather avoid. You see, the bitterness, resentment and hurt now sets him and his father apart, and resentment is so pernicious and so damaging to the fragile human heart. But the Father comes out to us and says, "My son, you have been with me all along. Let us go together and be joyful, for your brother has been gone for so long." But join in, he says, no. The hurt and anger is simply much too strong. This son of yours has squandered your property with lavish living and prostitutes. You welcoming him home and throwing him a party is something I can only dispute. You see, as the elder, you cannot join in on the fun, because joy and resentment cannot coexist. When we listen to the self-pitying, jealous words the elder son shared to express his point of view, we realize his hurt comes from a heart that feels it never received what it was due. It is a hurt expressed in a subtle way, forming a bedrock of human resentment. I've tried so hard, worked so long, yet failed to receive any form of attention. I have not been thanked, not honoured, and still have not received what others get so easily. I have not asked nor wanted, yet more attention is given to those who take life so casually. You see, we crave communion with our Father, and it's the thing we seem to think we lack, and we work hard toward it and become bitter, forgetting that communion with Him we already have. Often we think of this lostness in terms of actions that are quite visible, quite easy to recognise. The younger son sinned in a manner that we can easily identify. It was a classical human failure with a straightforward resolution, quite easy to understand and sympathise, his sin under no illusion. The lostness of the elder, though, is harder for us to deal to, because this lostness has attached itself to the underside of our virtue. It is good to work hard and serve on our Father's land. It is good to honour others and lend a helping hand. We are called to a life of honouring the Lord and obeying His commands, and we genuinely desire to live a life that is pleasing to our God. Baking cookies for our neighbours is a fantastic thing to do, and loving even when it hurts is what we're called to, but this all becomes slavery if we're trying to earn our way to Jesus, because we've forgotten that our home with Him was freely given to us. But my healing comes when I remember the Father left the party to remind me that I'm already at home. When we remember we are at home, our hardened hearts melt away. As we look into the eyes of a Father who cherishes, adores, and forgave, the Father comes to find you and says, come join in on all of this. My grace abounding to you is something I don't want you to miss. And what a beautiful sight it would be if the elder son in the painting started to move, and like a balm over a calloused heart, God's mercy starts to soothe. The standoff pose starts to relax, and fearful thoughts he begins to lose. The oiled elbows started unfolding, and hardened eyes melted away. His coiled fingers started to open, and hands went up in praise. And in this mighty image of God's mercy, this brother started to engage. Because he remembered he was already at home and in communion with our Father. As the elder remembering we're home, we're no longer crippled by resentment. We are joyful, playful, loving, leading a life full of contentment. We are not burdened and bound by working our way toward God, because serving him is loving him, not working in a dutiful slog. We are free to receive critique without needing to be critical back. Do not feel jealous of the joy in others that we sometimes seem to lack. We need not be offended by or suspicious of other people's motives, for we are secure at home because our Father is our main focus. We can enter into that joy that God calls us to so readily. We let the love of God, not our own efforts, become our place of healing. We can joyfully serve the Lord. And when I again start to work toward the salvation God has freely given me and you, I remember I'm already home, and that God went looking not just for the younger son, but the elder son too. The thing I've loved about this book is that the divine is captured in the most human. But the story moves beyond the sons, better articulated by Henry Nouwen, who says, a child does not remain a child. A child becomes an adult. An adult becomes a mother and a father. When the prodigal returns home, he returns not to remain a child, but to claim his sonship and become a father himself. Becoming the father is therefore the conclusion of today's reflections. The Father is a Father who celebrates, who sees joy in the small and intimate, a Father who mourns and grieves for a broken world but still chooses to see joy in it, a God who rejoices when one sinner returns home, which statistically isn't interesting, but numbers never seem to matter to God because he celebrates the small things. You see, we are ready and prepared for bad news, to read about wars and violence, to expect dishonesty, pain and crime, to expect disarray and conflict. We expect people to talk about pain, problems, anguish and depression. We want to hear about their failures and judge whether or not they learnt their lesson. We are disappointed when the world isn't filled with newspaper news because we want sensationalism, to hear of heartache and conflicting points of views. It is easy for us to choose cynicism over joy again and again and again. But the Father, he knows there's pain. So he comforts and chooses to love and see joy instead. Here lies the greatest challenge on the journey to being the Father, not remaining the Son, which is not to look with the eyes of my own low self-esteem, but with the eyes of God's love. Through the eyes of one who chooses to see the good in people's lives, through the eyes of one who cares for the brothers caught in sin, pain, and lies. But do I want to be the Father? Do I want to be not just the one who is being forgiven, but also the one that forgives? Not just the one being welcomed home, but also the one who welcomes in. Not just the one who receives compassion, but the one who offers it as well. This is a very hard call. And some of us will remain children all of our lives. For we are heirs with Christ, but do we really want to be a heir with all that it implies? Because being in the Father's house requires that I make the Father's life my own, and I have to believe that all human heart desires can now be found at home. It's the discipline to be free from the need and desire to wander in Rome, dare to trust that fulfillment comes when welcoming our brothers home. I have to dare to carry the responsibility of a spiritually adult person. I have to be forgiving, loving, and trusting, pulling back my safe little curtain, free to receive others' burdens without need for evaluation, categorizing, or criticism. We choose to celebrate good that pierces dark moments. We choose joy instead of cynicism. We are not ignorant of the famine, heartache, wars, and pain that plague our land. But the Father doesn't have to wait until all is well to celebrate every little hint of the kingdom that is at hand. We choose joy because of the Father's grace. Sometimes there is a level of loneliness in this fatherhood. No success, popularity, or power. But that same place of loneliness is also where real freedom and spiritual strength is found. I have to let the rebellious and resentful son step up to receive the forgiving love the Father offers me. Then both sons can be transformed into the Father, and so slowly and gradually this transformation leads me to the fulfillment of the deepest desires of my restless heart, because what greater joy can there be for us than to stretch out our tired arms and welcome home, just as we have been. Friends, we are lost sons and we are lost daughters who are all looking for our way home. Whether we are lost in resentment or we're in the distant country all alone, we must remember, please remember, that God says, my beloved is you. And while you're searching and wandering, remember the Father is looking and searching for you too. And one day, we'll be truly at home with our Father, and we'll be singing, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wayward son like me. For I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was in bondage, but now I'm free. Amen.